Welcome to another episode of Biscuits and Jam from Southern Living. I'm Sid Evans, Editor-in-Chief of Southern Living magazine. We've recorded these episodes as we've all sheltered at home, and between passionate conversations about Southern food, you'll also hear honest takes about how these musicians have been dealing with the pandemic. Today's guest is a legend, pure and simple. In fact, I think it's fair to say that he's the living embodiment of country music. His influence has spread over decades and generations, to every corner of the globe and to his own children.
Well, I've said this a bunch of times, there's nothing like having your kids on stage with you, especially when they're good.
Willie Nelson was raised by his grandparents in Abbott, Texas, and he became infatuated with music, both on the radio and at church, at an early age. After moving to Nashville in 1960, he was soon writing songs that became massive hits for Patsy Cline, Roy Orbison, and Ray Price, among others. The 70s and 80s saw Willie cementing his place as one of the world's most beloved performers. Since then, songs like On the Road Again have become synonymous with country music, so much so that it's hard to imagine a world without it. And even at the age of 87, no one is more ready to get back on the road again than Willie Nelson.
On the road again, going places that I've never been, seeing things that I may never see again. I can't wait to get on the road again.
On top of 10 Grammy wins over 52 career nominations, Willie is on Rolling Stone's list of the 100 greatest singers of all time and has been honored by the Library of Congress for his contributions to popular music. His new record, First Rose of Spring, came out last week and marks his 70th album release. During today's conversation, you'll hear Willie describe how his earliest connection with music came through the church.
The first music I learned to play was gospel music, and Amazing Grace. It was one of the first songs I learned to sing. I got preached to by every religion that there is just by sitting at my window listening every Sunday.
Plus, his message for healthcare workers dealing with COVID-19 on a daily basis.
These folks are heroes. These are the ones that right now, they are on the front line battling one of the biggest wars, I guess, that this country has ever had to face, because there's no visible enemy.
All that and more coming up on episode 6 of Biscuits and Jam with Willie Nelson. So tell me, where are you sitting right now?
I'm sitting in my pickup truck on my ranch here in Luck, Texas, and it's about 100 degrees out there, and I've been out looking at the horses who are, looking for a shade tree, so it's all good, though.
Well, that sounds like a great place to do an interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Willie, tell me, what was your favorite thing about growing up in Abbott, Texas?
Well, it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. We had, I think, we had the Church of Christ, still do, Catholic. We have the Methodist and the Baptist. That's 4 on each corner there. And then we have the African-American church on the edge of town. So we're covered with religion down there.
That's a lot of churches in a small town.
It is. I tried to go to all of them. And matter of fact, I have been to all of them. And even the SPJST Hall down there in West, that's between Abbott and Waco. It's a little place where the Catholics got together there and had their dominoes and whatever they, and little dance, polkas and waltzes. And that's where I learned a lot about music, was really down there in West Texas.
So you were mostly raised by your grandparents. Can you describe for me the house that you grew up in?
Well, let's see. There was one old house down on the very edge of town there where I first grew up. And me and my sister lived there, and my grandmother was there, and we had an old well in the back where we got our drinking water. And, I picked cotton, baled hay, did all those things to make a living down there in the summertime. And it wasn't a bad place at all. I really loved it.
And was your grandmother a good cook?
Yes, she was a great cook. And she did all the old-fashioned stuff like biscuits and gravy and ham and eggs and all that good stuff. And she was great. Biscuits and gravy was my favorite.
Well, you can't go wrong with that.
No.
And so was it your grandparents who introduced you to music?
More or less. All my life I heard my dad play music, and my mom was a singer. But they divorced and moved out pretty early, so I was there with my grandparents. And my grandmother taught Sister Bobby how to play the piano. And I would sit on the piano stool when I was 4 or 5 years old. She was 6 or 7, playing the piano. And I learned a lot about music just by sitting there listening to her play and learning along with her. She could read music, and I couldn't, barely read. But I was sitting there listening and learning a lot about music just by being on the piano stool with Sister Bobby.
And did y'all listen to the radio a lot when you were a kid?
Yeah, that's we'd sit around and look at the radio. Everybody in the house, it's like it's WSM time for the Grand Ole Opry. So everybody will run around in the house, and we'll have 5 or 6 people in the house sitting there looking at the radio with a little light in there. It was quite entertaining.
So, what did the Nelson family do for the holidays back then? Did y'all have a lot of big gatherings?
Well, the town itself, Abbott had the summer camps and all that, and with the religious. I live right next to the tabernacle there. After I left the little place on the south edge of town, I moved up about a couple of 100 yards, really, not that much further, into a house that sit right next to the tabernacle, where all the churches in town came together and would do their services there. So I got preached to by every religion that there is, just by sitting at my window listening every Sunday.
With all the churches and all that church music and the gospel, I'm wondering, did that have a big impact on you as a musician?
Sure, yeah, it did. The first music I learned to play was gospel music, Amazing Grace. It was one of the first songs I learned to sing. And this kind of music has kind of carried me through the years, and I've recorded a lot of it, written a lot of gospel songs. The Family Bible was one of mine that I wrote, In God's Eyes. In fact, we were planning on coming out with a gospel album, and all this pandemic come along, I like to call it, and it screwed things up, so our releases are slowed down. But we do have a gospel album ready to go whenever, it's time.
Well, I think we all need a gospel album right now, so if y'all can move that along, that would be great.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right. We're going through some strange times here where help is needed.
So I'm wondering, before you got into music as a career, it sounds like you had a lot of different jobs.
Well, earlier, I worked in the fields and baled hay, pulled corn, and all that good stuff. And then I got into radio. I did some disc jockey work there. And I enjoyed that. And the same time I was playing music, I was playing in the clubs there in West and Waco and around. And that's really where I kind of got my start in music, was right there in Abbott and West, Waco, that area.
And you did a brief stint in the Air Force. I'm wondering if that had a big influence on you later in life.
Well, it did because I really didn't have no bad time in there. I was at Keesler Air Force Base there for a while, and Biloxi, and San Antonio, and I wasn't in there that long, but I was in there long enough to really. I got to play music while I was in there, so
Did you really?
Yeah, the old top sergeant in there was he liked music, so we would play little concerts for him, and he loved it.
He was the luckiest sergeant around.
Well, I was kind of lucky to have him because he liked music, and we could get along.
So Willie, I'm wondering if you remember making that first trip to Nashville and what that was like.
Yeah, I do. I drove an old 51 Buick, and on the way up, picked up a hitchhiker. And anyway, I went right into Nashville, and I had some songs that I had written. I had Family Bible had been #1, so I was kind of going in on that. And I was kind of had some strings out for people to record my song. Billy Walker did Funny How Time Slips Away. And Hello Walls, Farron Young did that. Patsy Cline did Crazy. So when I first hit Nashville, I got lucky, and I knew it,
Well, I wanted to ask, you played a lot at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, which is a favorite of mine even now.
All right.
What was that like back in the early days?
It was incredible. Tootsie was a great friend of mine, and, she had a hat pin, and she'd give her any trouble, she'd run you out of there with that hat pin. So you had to stay halfway straight. She didn't mind if you get drunk, you just stay out of the way, because Tootsie was tough.
What was she like as a person? Was she a lot of fun?
Oh, she was a lot of fun, liked to laugh and tell jokes and music. And her son was a drummer. We played drums together for a long time. I think her husband was a guard out at the prison there. So, she had some stories to tell, and we had a lot of fun. Tootsie's are right behind the Grand Ole Opry, so that's where we go every night. And then we go over there and drink a couple of beers and go play the opera, and then come back and drink a couple more.
So you mentioned Crazy, which is one of the biggest country hits of all time. I'm wondering if you remember when that song came to you.
Well, we'd have to look back and see what year Floyd Tillman did a song called I Gotta Have My Baby Back. The first two notes on that song was baby. Baby, I gotta have my baby back. And so those two notes stuck with me. And then one day I said, crazy. So I ripped off an old buddy of mine for a couple of notes there and to do that song. But I thank him for it.
Did you get to spend much time with Patsy Cline?
We did a few shows together, and I remember when I first met her, I was in Tootsie's, and I had just come from Boston, and I had some songs, and Tootsie put them on the jukebox, and I think Crazy was one of them. And Patsy's husband, a guy named Charlie Dick, was there, and he heard that, and he said, I want you to play that for Patsy. And I said, okay, I will one of these days. He said, no, right now, let's go to the house. And it was almost midnight. I said, I'm not going over there this late. He said, come on, it'll be all right. So we went over to Patsy's house. She come out. I wouldn't get out. But she come out and made me get out and come in. Did the song. She loved it and recorded it the next week. Her record of Crazy was the most played jukebox song of all time. It still is.
And do you remember the first time you heard it? It must have made an impression.
Oh, it was, I was there at the session, so it made a great impression. She and I have a couple of gospel songs that we did together that haven't come out yet, but I'm figuring out a way to get them out there.
There's lots more with Willie Nelson after the break. Welcome back to Biscuits and Jam from Southern Living. I'm Sid Evans, and we're talking with the red-headed stranger himself, Willie Nelson. Willie, I want to ask you about your new album. It's called The First Rose of Spring, and I wanted to ask about the title track. It is so beautiful.
Thank you.
It's also kind of sad.
Oh, God, is it ever, yeah.
What drew you to that song?
It was just a great story. It was, like you say, it was so sad, but it had a whole story in there about how they met, and it was a true story because I met the writer, and he told me that his grandparents, that was their story, and every year he would bring her the first rose of spring. So it was so incredibly moving that, I'd be a dummy enough to say, well, let me have that song,
Would it be too much to ask you to just sing a little bit?
Oh, let me see if I can remember. The first time he saw her, he knew everything had changed. Butterflies danced around her like the first rose of spring.
Summertime would have never started, and wintertime would never end. She colored his life, opened his eyes to things he'd never dreamed. Without the first rose of spring.
And then the last verse is incredible. The last time I saw her, I knew everything had changed. We said goodbye and let the tears fall like rain on the first rose of spring.
That last verse is just devastating.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about your kids. You've been performing a lot with your kids over the last few years. What does that mean to you?
Well, I've said this a bunch of times. There's nothing like having your kids on stage with you, especially when they're good. And I've been lucky enough to have some really talented kids, and Lucas and Micah and Amy and Paula, and they're just good singers, and they're nice to have with you on the stage.
Do y'all have a favorite song that you like to play together?
Oh, I think, we all will get together in the end for the gospel set that I always end our show with a gospel set, and we'll do The Circle Be Unbroken and I Saw the Light. Those couple of songs, and we all sing together, and it's a lot of fun.
And did they just pick up instruments naturally, or was that something that you really encouraged in them?
No. If you see our living room here, you look around, you see a piano over there, guitars, 4 or 5 guitars, and a drum set. And I just let them lay there over the years, and eventually I saw Micah go over, start hitting the drums, and Lucas was playing the guitar. Next thing you know, they were playing everything. Micah was a good piano player, so was Lucas. So they were playing all the instruments that were there. And then it was just natural when they came out on the road with me that they just sit right in and knew what to do.
Well, they sure do. They are really talented. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Willie, I want to ask you just about the last couple of months. This is probably the longest stretch that you have been home in a while. How have you enjoyed the break?
I have not enjoyed it at all. Not a minute of it. I should be happy, here we are. We're safe and we're healthy, and, all that. I'm appreciative and thankful for that. But good Lord, we were on a roll there. The last show we played was in Houston, and we had 80,000 people. And we had a great tour up until then. And Sister Bobby had been feeling a little bad, and she came back for the Houston show and sat in and played great. And everybody was so happy we're back and we're moving again. And then the next day they said, it's all over, go home. And that was tough.
And you've got a big work family that you travel with, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of us that not only those guys depend on the road to make a living, and fortunately, I've got a couple of $100 and set aside, so I can go a little longer than they can. But I can't go much longer, because I've got all my bills and things too. So I'm ready to play, and they are too. So I don't know when we'll be able to play. I haven't heard any predictions. A lot of people are saying the 4th of July. I'm thinking that may be too early. I'm more inclined to believe September, but if they say it's all coming back again in the winter, what the hell good is all that, So it's just one of those, let's wait and see, and be thankful that we're healthy.
Yeah, that's right. That is right. What does a typical day on the ranch look like for you now?
Well, I get up in the morning and have a little breakfast and come out and drive around and look at the horses. I've got a lot of horses that I rescued from being slaughtered. So I've got about 75 horses, and they're just incredibly beautiful. To me, that's nothing prettier than watching horses, because when they say horse sense, they're not kidding. The horses are a little smarter than we are.
Do you still like to ride?
I love to ride, and unfortunately, I've outlived all my best ponies, so now now I've got to train another pony so I can ride, and that'd be all right, but I ain't no big hurry to get. Usually, I'd have to do a movie or a video to ride horses anyway, but they kept me on the road all the time. And so now that I'm here and I got all the horses, I could ride every day if I wanted to, but it's 100 degrees out there and they don't look like they want to be ridden, so I let them rest today.
Willie, are you a barbecue fan?
Yeah, I like barbecue. In the last few years, I haven't eaten a lot of, I'm a big fan of chicken fried steaks and all that good stuff, enchiladas and all that good Mexican food. But I've stayed away from it for a while because, I got up to 180 pounds, so I had to be careful.
Well, you need to take care of yourself, but whatever you're doing seems to be working.
It's working good. I'm, got myself a pretty good little diet, and have a nice garden down here where we grow our own vegetables and fruit, and that's good to have.
I wanted to ask you, a lot of farmers are really struggling right now with all this food and the animals that they can't sell. And as one of the founders of Farm Aid, do you think that there's anything that we can do to support them?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things we can do, and Farm Aid is doing some of it. We support over 100 organizations out there around the country who were set up in the beginning to help farmers when the first big crisis came along a few years ago, and when we started Farm Aid. So every year we've been getting money from the people who give it to Farm Aid, and we spread it out to the farmers out there and the organizations who really need it and know where to go. There's a difference between our small family farmers and the big corporate farmers. We farm altogether differently than they do. We like to still do organic farming, and one of their big things is to put all the chemicals you can on every acre so it will yield everything it can. And that's not what we're into. And right now the farmers need some help. If you can give a little bit, give it to Farm Aid, because I know it's going to the right place. I sign every check that goes out.
Well, it's a great cause, and I know that there are a lot, especially the small farms, are really struggling right now with all the restaurants that are out of business.
Absolutely.
So, Willie, you've been through some tough times in your life. What do you do to get through difficult times?
Well, it's a mental battle, you know. I wrote a song called One Day at a Time. Do you ever hear that song?
I have, yes.
I live one day at a time. I dream one dream at a time. Yesterday's dead and tomorrow is blind, and I live one day at a time. And I still believe that's the way to live. There's nothing I can do about yesterday. There ain't nothing I can do about tomorrow. But right now, I'm pretty much in control. So this is the day that I'm living, and it's the only one that really matters right now.
I'm wondering if you have any hopes for this country after all that we've been through.
Absolutely. This is, there's a lot of great, strong, smart people in this country, and we know how to fix it. So, yeah, I have a great deal of confidence. This virus will go away. And when it does, we'll be right back in the middle of where we were, fighting the same battle that we fought before it hit. So we have to have people who know how to protect us and how to take care of not only us, but the farmers and everybody else in the land.
I hear a dog barking back there. Is that a favorite of yours?
I think it was that just drove by. I saw a guy drive by in a truck, and he had a dog. I guess the dog didn't like me or something.
Willie, do you have a message for all the healthcare workers that are out there?
Oh, my God, yeah. I mean, they are the heroes. They're the ones on the front battle lines out there and taking a chance on losing their lives and the lives of their loved ones every day. These folks are heroes. These are the ones that right now, they are on the front line battling one of the biggest wars, I guess, that this country has ever had to face, because there's no visible enemy. And I know we're reopening around the country, and I guess that's okay as long as we stay distanced away from each other and follow all the rules. But it's still concerning, because who knows what's going to happen next year.
That is the truth. Do you miss being on your bus?
Well, I miss it a lot. It's parked right down at the bottom of the hill, and I go down there and sit on it a while and pretend I'm going somewhere. So, yeah, I miss it.
Willie, what are you most looking forward to when we get on the other side of this?
Going back to work and playing for an audience, you know, that I don't have to worry about either of us getting sick, you know. It's one thing to go back and play to an audience, but first of all, you don't want them coming there getting sick by the people next door applauding and whatever, and it's just too close right now. But one of these days, it will open up again. We can have another 4th of July picnic, and we can have another outdoor farm aid. We can do all these things, but it's going to take a while, and we'll wait.
We will wait, but I think a better day will come. Well, Willie Nelson, thank you for being on Biscuits and Jam.
I'm glad to talk to you, and be good to yourself, and let's talk again somewhere down the road.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Willie Nelson. His new album, First Rose of Spring, is available wherever you get music and from willienelson.com. Southern Living is based in Birmingham, Alabama, and this podcast was produced and edited in Nashville, Tennessee. If you like what you hear, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or telling your friends about the program. You can find us online at southernliving.com and subscribe to our print publication by searching for Southern Living at www.magazine.store. Biscuits and Jam is produced by Heather Morgan Schott, Chrissy Tiglius, and me, Sid Evans, for Southern Living. Thanks also to Ann Kane, Jim Hankey, Eliza Lambert, and Rachel King at Pod People. Join me next week for my discussion with Brett Eldridge. We'll see you then.